Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Kristen Smith, Pennsylvania editor for the Center Square. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter, Anthony Hennon. This week, the Senate Republican Policy Committee met to discuss reforming zoning laws in Pennsylvania's municipalities, of which there are about 2,500. The idea here is that land use and zoning restrictions have been a big problem in making more affordable housing for residents. So what specifically about zoning laws make houses more expensive, Anthony?
Yeah, so this is not a Pennsylvania-only issue. I mean, we've seen this especially on the coast where we've seen a sharp increase in housing prices over the years and a limited field for building. Essentially, zoning rules are built on the local level. They regulate, what types of buildings or what types of housing can be constructed in different neighborhoods. So the problem with zoning is essentially a lot of these local restrictions have made it illegal to build smaller housing or more affordable housing. And these rules, such as minimum sizes for houses or lot sizes, not allowing accessory dwelling units or granny flats in like the backyards of housing, parking minimum requirements have been another issue. Yeah, there's a few different issues that are usually brought up in these discussions of zoning. But the general idea is the more rules and regulations you place around zoning in terms of how big a house can be, how much parking there needs to be, what type of housing you can build in which neighborhood, these costs add up. It requires more and more paperwork to make sure these things get approved even before the house can get built. So that drives up cost even before we factor in materials or labor or anything like that.
So there seems to be a pretty strong argument among some of the industry analysts that were speaking at this hearing for giving more flexibility in these rules. But as we, know from anyone living here, municipalities really have a lot of local control over things like this. So given that, and given that that's the culture of local governments in Pennsylvania, even though it seems like an obvious solution, it's probably not going to be an easy sell, right?
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to that general, local officials, state officials are jealous of the power they already hold, and they're less willing to give it up. When experts were testifying here, Senator Gene Yaw out of Williamsport up in northeastern Pennsylvania, he said that I know that probably going back and say opening up the municipality planning code and quite frankly, preempting some local control would be viewed as sacrilege somehow. But it almost sounds to me like that's what somehow we need to do. Essentially, a lot of these state officials, a lot of them have had local experience, either as local politicians or working with local leaders. They're aware of these kind of boundaries on local control. But at the same time, the economic costs, the seriousness of how hard it can be for lower income people to find housing. This seems like it's pushing up and becoming such a problem that state officials are willing to consider going back and looking at local control and moving that from local municipalities to maybe counties, or putting in some guardrails or some state level rules about what you can and cannot restrict.
Some of your reporting has, in the past and this week, has pointed to how unaffordable housing has been a longstanding issue and that it's actually getting worse, and that one report has actually estimated that Pennsylvania is missing 98,000 housing units, while at the same time prices are rising 14%. So one of the experts that you quoted said that the biggest barrier to home affordability in these zoning laws is minimum lot size requirements. Can you talk a little bit about some of the lot size requirements that might be prohibiting townships from building more affordable home communities?
Yeah, I think the clearest example of this is just this idea of, the lot size adding on a minimum basically affects how big or how small the house can be. So when you look at, Pennsylvania neighborhoods 100 years ago, either Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, smaller towns like Meadville or Stroudsburg, the houses were simply smaller, and you had these row homes where, they would touch each other right on the property line. So back then, simply put, you could build more housing units on smaller pieces of land. So 100 years ago, a block might hold, say, 12 houses. Whereas now, as these minimum lot sizes have gotten bigger, instead of building 12 houses, you might only be able to build 5 or 6 due to, the minimum size of the house has to be as bigger. They might not be allowed to build right up to the property line. So this is basically going from smaller houses that, lower income people or middle class people could afford. Now the houses are getting bigger and you simply need more money to be able to make an offer on it. Another problem when you're looking at, getting construction costs tied to site preparations, permits. Glenn Yoder of the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors testified that a lot of these new home construction costs, they're anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000 before even getting to the point of building, just getting permits. So when you have these high, bureaucratic requirements, you're already looking at building new housing that isn't affordable to anyone who's middle class. So these issues kind of compound on one another, and it's hard. It's hard to make a big dent in this on the local level. A lot of this seems like it will have to be done either on the county level or the state level.
Keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Anthony Hennon, this is Kristen Smith. Please subscribe and thanks for listening.